Dr. Hirsch, thank you again for agreeing to a very short interview here. We're in Washington, D.C., and we're attending the ASCO meeting. And I want to talk about your new book again. We've had you on the show in the past, and you have told our audience what is peak oil. Reiterate that. What is peak oil for those that are just tuning in?
Peak oil really represents the maximum of world oil production, after which world oil production will go into decline. And when it goes into decline, there will then be shortages in many places in the world, and those shortages will get deeper and deeper year after year until we mitigate the shortage problem. And that's going to take a considerable period of time because of the massive size of worldwide oil consumption.
Now, in terms of an average person watching this, what does this mean? Does that mean that, let's say the world production currently is 86, 87 million barrels a day, let's get up to 88, 89, then it starts to decline. So for many, they just think, okay, I may be paying $3 per gallon. Okay, so I'll pay $4 per gallon. But is it beyond that? Is it beyond the gas pump? How is that going to impact their lives? What does that mean to families and individuals as we go forward?
When shortages begin, they're going to massively affect life on the planet. Everybody is going to get hurt. It's not just a matter that your gasoline prices will go up a little bit. In fact, your gasoline prices will go up considerably, and then beyond that, there will be shortages. So you will not be able to get the gasoline that you need or that you're used to. And so there's going to be a major jolt to economies, particularly in the United States, less so in other countries in the world that are oil exporters. But in countries that are oil importers like the United States, there's going to be a great deal of difficulty. Besides that, world commerce depends on moving goods back and forth by ships and airplanes that run on oil products. And so the costs will go up dramatically for goods that that are in international commerce, and then in addition to that, the costs will go up because the cost of fuel will go up dramatically. So everybody will be impacted deeply. And because the problem is complicated, I know that you'd love to give simple answers, and people would like to give simple answers. I've been in this business long enough that I know that it's very hard to give simple one-line answers, and that's part of the reason that we wrote the book that we did, because people need to get in and understand why things are the way they are and why they're so complicated, and why it is likely that we will have trouble in the relatively near future.
Now, you, in 2005, you were commissioned by the Department of Energy to do a study and look into the future of what peak oil means. Also, not only what peak oil does, but also what other alternative sources we have to enable us to mitigate the situation. You looked at all sorts of options. And we talked about it in the past, and most people probably know about the Hirsch report, which is significant because potentially for the first time you're talking about someone who's commissioned by the Department of Energy, not just an independent scientist. Now, your new book, The Impending World Energy Mess, which I highly recommend to anybody that wants to understand what the future looks like, not only in the United States, but globally. Why the new book? What is it in this one that wasn't in 2005?
I've spoken to lots of groups around the world on this subject, and when you give a presentation, it's typically 45 minutes to an hour, and you cannot get the complexity and the understanding across in a very short presentation. We all like to get answers quickly and crisply and so forth, and the crisp bottom line on this is we're headed for a major mess, and that's why we titled the book the way we did. The book is aimed at intelligent people, not necessarily technical people, but I think technical people can use it, that basically remind people how oil impacts us and how it really is the lifeblood of our modern economies. And then something we tell people in relatively simple terms how oil behaves, which is different than anybody is used to in their everyday life. Oil production and the behavior of oil production in the world is just complicated and different than normal. We then show how a number of different, very intelligent people using different techniques have looked at the problem and how it's likely to unfold, and we then express our opinion on that kind of thing. But then we go beyond that to make the point that an oil problem is not an energy problem. An oil problem is a liquid fuels problem, and the reason it's a liquid fuels problem is there's something like $50 to $100 trillion worth of capital equipment, cars, trains, boats, planes in the world that run on liquid fuels and cannot be quickly converted to something else, maybe not for a very, very long time. But you can't change those things quickly, so you need to do conservation and you need to produce alternate liquids in order to keep us going until we can work our way through a very long transition to other energy sources.
So essentially your solution is kind of a two-part solution. One, you mentioned conservation.
Yes.
A conservation. The other one is looking for alternative solutions. We have enough brains here in the United States and elsewhere that if we focus on the problem and if we stop denying that we have a problem and we put our scientists to work, we're sure that within a decade we'll find other solutions. The first part, the conservation. What would you say to an average audience that says, look, I've never heard this from CNN, ABC News, or any of our politicians on top? They don't come out. Are they looking for the best interest of us in a long-term strategy? Why aren't they talking about it? If it is that detrimental, if it is that immediate, this thing's going to happen, why? What would you say to an average person who says, I didn't hear it from President Obama in a way, I didn't hear it from President Bush before, and now you're talking about a situation that's going to happen. What do you react to that question?
Well, first of all, they have heard it from Bruce Sultani. All right, and I give you credit for getting ahead of this problem and beginning to talk about it and beginning to share it with your viewers. So that's a real service. In terms of your question, it's not a matter of turning our scientists loose. It's a matter of going with and implementing technologies that are here today. Because the character of the problem is not that we need discovery, although future discoveries will indeed make a difference. The problem in mitigating the decline of world oil production is to implement conservation on a massive scale and implement enhanced oil recovery on a massive scale and coal to liquids and gas to liquids and heavy oil and a few other things. These are technologies that are here today and ready to be implemented. And we have to implement them because the decline problem is basically running away from us. And what we have to do is we have to build stuff and get it out there. And that's the only way that we're going to work the problem in the near term. In the longer term, yes, research and development is extremely important, but it's not going to impact for decades. Because first you have to invent something, and then you have to engineer it, and then you have to demonstrate it, and even in a compressed schedule, that just plain takes a long time, and then you got to go build a lot of what it is you've come up with.
Okay, so in putting this thing into a number or a visual effect, here you have a plateau of production in the world. What you say in the book, we'll probably have a 2 to 4% decline, natural decline, as it happens in every well, and as a reservoir engineer, I've seen it time and again, it happens, it's a natural phenomenon. So now you're seeing it collectively at the world is happening, but at the same time you have potentially a growth of 3 or 4% GDP in the world, which drives the demand up, so you got a significant gap here. In intro, how long do you think it does take for us is there a massive wealth transfer in a society for those that see the problem, get prepared for them for their investments and a strategy, and those get blindsided essentially? What is going to happen? How long does it take for us to readjust to the new reality?
First of all, it's our belief, based on the experience of 1973 and 1979, that when oil shortages develop, GDP will get dragged down. So as much as people might demand having more, the more is not there to satisfy their needs, which means that the prices will go up dramatically and there will be shortages. So the character of this problem is that world GDP will be dragged down by the dragging down of world oil production. What we did in 2005 and also in this book is to take a look at the very best that could be achieved in terms of mitigation, physical mitigation as well as administrative mitigation. And talk about that if you like. But in terms of physical mitigation, a worldwide crash program is the best that you can do. The very best that you can do by definition. And a worldwide crash program and the things that are ready to be built now, in fact, are going to take much longer than a decade to begin to implement, begin to impact. And therefore, we're in a situation where world GDP is going to be dragged down by what's happening. And of course, this will be uneven around the world because oil exporters will be in reasonably good shape, but they will still be impacted. And the oil importers like the United States and Europe and Japan and Korea and so forth are going to be hurt very badly.